Okay, so I think we're ready to get started. Thank you all for coming today. This webinar is Library Management Scenarios. It's from SELA's Southeast Library Association's Public Library section. My name is Kate. I'm your host today. If you have any questions or comments, I am monitoring the chat, and you can chat me directly or you can chat the whole group. I am going to ask that you mute your microphone or your audio for the first part of this webinar, and then we'll start taking questions and discussions towards the end. Two quick reminders before we get into the main part of the webinar. This is being recorded. We had about half the people who weren't able to attend right now, so I'm recording it so that they can have the webinar later. And then I also want to remind you that we have another webinar scheduled the last week of August that's about career paths in libraries. And then the SELA conference is a joint conference with the Arkansas Library Association, and that's going to be at the end of September, September 27th through September 29th, if you're interested in attending that. Oh, great. Hey, Stephanie, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Okay, are there any questions before we get started? Okay, great. So we're going to jump right in.
All right.
So first, I would like to introduce our presenters, our panelists for today. We have four fabulous library managers with us. First, we have Alexandra Eberle. She's library director at Brooke County Public Libraries in West Virginia. Then we have Mark Engelbrecht. He is branch leader for the Mountain Island location with Charlotte Mecklenburg Library in North Carolina. And then we have Stephanie Fennell. She is the North Regional Manager for Durham County Library in North Carolina. And we have Christy Reel, who's the Kannapolis Branch Manager in Cabarrus County Public Library in North Carolina. Okay, so if you all would just take a minute to introduce yourselves and share just one or two sentences about yourself.
Should I go first?
That's fine.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. Like she said, my name is Alexandra Eberle. I go by Alex. Very brief. I will be at my position 5 years next month. So in about a month, I will be going through my annual evaluation with my board of directors. I do no longer live in the county that I work at. However, I'm a strong West Virginia advocate, even though I live back home in Pittsburgh. And other than that, if you need to contact me after this, please feel free. I'd be happy to answer any questions. But I'm great to be here today. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
I'll go next. My name is Stephanie Fennell. I am a native North Carolinian. I've been in my position just over a year. Before that, I was an adult services manager within Durham County Library. And feel free to email me after that. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to talk to you one-on-one.
Great, thank you.
I guess I'll chime in. My name is Mark Engelbrecht. I've been with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library for almost 19 years. I've been in a management position for almost 9 years now. Actually, no, 9 years as of last month. And I've led at 4 different locations, done a lot of projects and things. Most of my efforts are change-driven. And I'm not the best manager, but I'm okay.
And I'm Christy Rial. I have been with Cabarrus County Public Libraries for 13 years. I've been a branch manager for a little over 2 years. Before that, I did have supervisory positions as a reference librarian and a circulation manager. I enjoy working in Central North Carolina. We are just about 30 minutes north of Charlotte. So to give you a little bit of geography of where Kannapolis is. And I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate this. So let's just jump right in. We have a couple of introduction questions first. So I would like to take turns with this. Our first two questions are, tell us a little bit about the knowledge and skills that you have gained outside the library world that have been very useful to you as a library manager. And then also here, what's the most surprising situation you've dealt with as a library manager? And you all, if you have something to, if you have an answer for this question, great, but don't feel like you have to answer every single question. Thank you.
Perfect. I'll just go again. Alex here. The first one, very briefly, about a skill that I think that I gained outside the library world, and this is going to sound very weird, is the ability to be able to work with my hands and figure out just simple instructions or how to put something together. My library in West Virginia is not a small library, but we're not a large library. So I do not have different departments in my library. I do have a custodian. She helps clean and keep everything, spectacular, but I do not have somebody maintenance-wise. So if I can get it done myself before I call in somebody that we have to pay, I've been a plumber before. I have been an electrician, you name it. I've changed a light bulb for one of my staff members' cars. So, I mean, just being able to figure out that, brief bit of technical help of following directions, watching a video on YouTube on how to do something is something that I really brought to that position. And then probably just saying the most surprising situation that I've dealt with is having to ban a patron for pooping in my library in the women's bathroom. He somehow went into the women's bathroom, went on the floor, and then decorated it with all the garbage the garbage cans. So I have temporary ban rights, but I went to get him permanently banned. So he is my only permanently banned patron in the 5 years I've been here, and I think that it was worth it.
I'll be glad to go next. This is Stephanie, and I think the biggest skill that I've gained working outside of the library came from when I worked at a bank, and I went through a customer service training where we had scenarios, and they spent a lot of time focusing on customer service and how you would handle the situation and how to respond. And so a lot of those skills that I learned then, I still implement today when I'm dealing with customers who are upset or, complaining or whatever the situation is. So I think that customer service, you can put that anywhere because it's just beneficial to kind of have a built-in response, know what to say, how to approach the situation, know who you're dealing with. So there are a lot of surprising situations working with the public.
Yeah.
I've dealt with people. I've had someone poop in the library, but they didn't make it to the bathroom. And I've had to permanently ban some people. So just in that 1 year, in less than a 1 year time span. So, yeah, we've had some crazy things. I think I don't know. Some of them I don't even know if I can talk about because it was just so outrageous. You feel like, oh my God. But yeah, we did have one guy that came in and he decided that he was going to make the threat that he was going to kill himself in the library. And so that was pretty unnerving, and we had to act appropriately and quickly and get the library director and everyone else involved in that. So.
Oh yeah, that sounds crazy.
It was.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I don't even know. Yeah.
Stephanie, how often would you say you have to ban someone?
So in my particular branch, I am surrounded. I have a middle school that is less than a 2-minute walk from my location and a high school that is less than a 5-minute walk from my location. So a lot of our bans come during the school year with teens who are acting inappropriately. Mm-hmm. So I ban quite often. In fact, when I started the job, I wasn't even on a week and I had to ban some teams, and I was like, oh my gosh, and write the ban letters and everything. So that was a little stressful coming right in the door. but it's gotten better, but I think at least once a month during the school year, at least.
Okay, great.
And it might be a ban for a month. It just depends on what the infraction is.
Yeah.
And of course, by being teens, they try to impress their friends. So I have to set some type of example that we're not going to tolerate that, because it was really out of control before I got there. So it's kind of getting under control. We'll see what the school year brings this year with a whole new set of 8th graders.
Oh, great. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go on to these 2 introduction questions. Mark or Christy, do you want to chime in for this?
I'll go ahead and chime in. So for organizing my time or my task list, I try to start and end my day with staff check-ins. So check on how things are going, especially with any of the staff that closed the night before, what the daily schedule looks like, who's out, who's in, that kind of thing, and any issues that need to be addressed. So I start my day with that, and then I end my day with also going through and just making sure everything's running smoothly and people are ready who are going to be closing for the day. For my own task, I try to have daily, weekly, and monthly to-do lists and goals. I'm not always great about following these, but I do use Outlook Calendar to keep up with my task, as well as I have a paper planner that I write down everything that I need to do. One of the best things that has helped me organize my task list and get things done is just delegating whenever and wherever possible. Just making sure that, I'm not the only one doing things. And if there are things that other staff can take on, putting those on them, because there's a lot of stuff I have to do myself. As far as what do I do when I don't know, I try to be honest, especially when my staff are coming to me with a situation and I don't know how to handle it. I'm always honest and just say, okay, I'm not sure. Let's discuss this some more. Let me think about this. Let me talk with somebody else. I think that helps a lot, is just being honest instead of trying to shoot from the hip and make things up as I go along. My first year of management, I wasn't very good at this, but my second year, I've been more willing to pick up the phone. There are 5 branches in Cabarrus County. So I will call one of the other branch managers and try to bounce some things off them, call up my director, ask her, what to do in this situation. I also, especially for staff issues, try to check online and see where people have had this issue in the past with other staff members and get some advice there. Of course, sometimes I don't have the luxury of time. So in some of those crisis situations, I just take a deep breath, do what I think is best in the moment, read up and ask about the situation afterward, and try to learn from any mistakes. Most recently, we had a person come in the library who was acting very erratically, was screaming at people and running through the library. I think there was some drug use involved. And I had never dealt with that before. So what I just focused on was keeping my staff and patrons safe, getting the police there as soon as possible. And then after that, I talked with our risk manager. I talked with the sheriff's department deputy that's assigned to the library. And I talked with my director and sort of got advice on how to deal with that in the future. So that's sort of what I do when I don't know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mark, do you have anything to add?
Sure, yeah. So recapping actually a lot of what you guys have said, my reoccurring events and meetings, of course, Outlook is fantastic. I also try to be very transparent with my staff and actually put a lot of the things that we have going on our desk schedule, or even specific like this webinar, actually on the desk schedule so my staff know where I am. I think it's just important for my staff to know where I am as it is for me to know where I'm going, just so that I'm available. And again, just being transparent with my day. So if I'm not around, they can get in touch with me. And then as far as when I don't know, I have a lot of experienced leadership, and I rely on them a lot. If I have time to ask the question, in the instances where you do have to kind of shoot from the hip and address an issue, usually this is with a customer, I kind of have a mindset of, okay, what's going to create the best news headline from this interaction? What is going to create the most positive interaction for the customer without compromising my principles, and also setting a good example for my staff and keeping a safe work environment, and also not misrepresenting the organization. So, do I make an accommodation, but also make it clear that accommodation isn't exactly an accommodation, or is it something that we need to make it very clear that this is a violation of policy and it's not allowed in the library and you need to get out? Just whatever I can do to try to create the most positive experience for the customer without compromising, again, principles, work safety, or misrepresenting the organization.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's move into some scenarios that managers may run into with library staff. So the first two kind of go together. What are your tips and go-to resources for training staff, both professional and paraprofessional? And then if you have provided comprehensive training, shadowing, and practice with a new staffer, and after several weeks they're still struggling, what do you do next?
Tips and go-to resources for training staff. I kind of have a mixture. We really had to recreate things at my library. My predecessor had been amazing for our library and bringing it to where it needed to be, but a lot of the policies and guidelines and procedures were very antiquated. That's the best word I could use for it. They did not allow for patrons to be themselves in a library. It was that very traditional type of place, and I'm the loudmouth, so that's not going to work in my library. So it was really recreating some things, and when I was recreating them, I don't know if every other state, I know some states are different. If you have a library commission, I tapped into my library commission for everything if they had their policies and guidelines, so I wasn't recreating the wheel. I did a lot of research on my own through WebJunction webinars and just email listservs of being updated of what's going on, and then kind of got a nice package, the lists of information that we can use when we're training. And we're currently training a new clerk. We had some changes in the library over the next past few months, I should say. I had a staff member who was here 29 years finally throw in the towel, and she's putting her feet up now in retirement. So we really had to do some switcheroos, and the staff member that I do have, she's very nice, very outgoing with the patrons, but we're seeing some difficulties where she's actually had a lot more staff training than some of our other clerks that I've hired in the past, and I'm kind of on the fence of if she's going to be there or not. So for what I'm going to be doing in this difficult situation is she has another month or so in her 90-day probationary period of time. I've been checking in with her weekly to see how she is, what we can do. I've been checking in with the staff that work with her. And now it's going to come to the point where we're correcting some behaviors, tweaking some things, giving her some additional help and what she needs. At the end, though, at the 90 days after all of that has been said and done and she's not there, then she may or may not be here further. However, there's a high probability that within the next 30 days, something could go great for her and it clicks. Libraries aren't for everybody. They think we read all day. You just need to be able to have the customer service, which she has. It's just, that's a huge thing we're working on right now, is just getting her trained enough. We've done all the right steps. Now it's just up to her to make it work.
I don't mind chiming in. I don't have a whole lot more to add to that, but yeah, definitely the first thing I look to when the staff is having difficulty is making sure that there's no barriers that we've created in our training. Have we not given them the resources they need? Is there anything on the support side in terms of what I'm giving to them or what I should be giving to them that's the actual barrier? If the barrier is something on their end, then that's where we have to reestablish expectations, make sure those timelines in terms of understanding what you should know by a certain amount of time is actually what's occurring, and then clearly stating outcomes if those expectations aren't met. So just making it real clear, you've got to learn this. There's no way around it. If you're having trouble with things, let me know where you're having the difficulty so we can address that and remove those barriers. But ultimately, with that 90 days, like you were just mentioning, we got to make it clear what the expectations are, and this isn't just something where you get to sit around and read. I will mention the go-to resources for training. I'm lucky enough that I'm in an organization where we have a checklist for each job type, and it's very clearly laid out these things by 30 days, these things by 60 days, these things by 90 days. And that's super beneficial in terms of just, again, making those expectations as clear as possible. And in fact, I'm actually onboarding a part-time staff member right now, and I just have him shadowing one of our leaders in the branch and just making sure that they're learning the correct thing as opposed to having to undo behaviors or undo tasks or undo bad performance issues. Just try to train them from the get-go as best we can.
Do you mind sharing that website, Mark?
I don't have a website. I have checklists. Is that what you're asking about? I think I can share that. I'll ask HR to make sure, but I'm pretty sure I can probably share those checklists.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, I'll be sending out a recording of the webinar in like 3 to 5 days. So if you could just have it to me by then, I can include it.
Will do.
Okay. Okay, so let's go on to the next staff scenario. Please give an example of how you've motivated staff and built a better team at work. You can.
I can take this one. This is Christy here. So mainly, I think, and I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I think building a culture of trust and transparency, and just I'm constantly communicating with my staff, constantly seeing what things are going on. I keep them updated on where we're doing well and where we need some work. So anytime I'm in a meeting, I'm making sure I'm bringing that back to them and telling them, hey, we got really complimented on this, but, we may need to work a little bit more on this. Trying to provide encouragement and shout outs when I do weekly emails, just saying, hey, so-and-so is doing a great job, or so-and-so handled this situation very well. So I think that sort of helps people see where they are and what they need to work on. I'm always try to be on the front lines with them, jumping in to help as I need to. And we do have, some fun stuff, but what I've seen sometimes in other places is they try the fun stuff without the communication and the trust, and it falls apart. So trying to just have, fun celebrations and challenges and competitions together isn't going to work if you don't have the trust and communication already built in, because sometimes people will be a little suspicious of that. So I think trust, transparency, and communication with a little bit of fun has really helped build my team into a fairly strong team. We've had very little turnover, and people are really doing well working together.
I wanted to also include that some of the things that I do to try to motivate the team and build a strong team is being fairly new in the position. I sat down with each of the unit managers individually and as a group to see exactly what it is that they enjoy doing, what part of their job that they like the most, what is it that they want to do, just to try to find out more about them and who they are and what their strengths are. And then I try to really work on tasks or projects that include their strengths. I also encourage lots of ideas. Whenever making some decisions, I will go in and just ask everybody for their input individually and then as a group. And then just for other staff members who aren't managers, I go around and I talk to them one-on-one. I make sure that I build a rapport with them. And I try to find out what their strengths and weaknesses are, what they like and what their dislikes are. So I really work on finding out who they are as people and then how we can best use that. So then when there's a situation where we're short in one unit and we need help, I always, let people know from the beginning that my priority is to build a cohesive team, that we work together and that we support each other. So I do cross-training where someone from the reference desk will have to work the cert desk. So whenever there is a shortage, I can ask them to jump in and it's not a problem. There's not any hesitation. They feel comfortable in that position. So, and I've let everyone know that as an employee, you have the right to address a situation. If you don't feel comfortable enforcing our policy, then to get your manager, but to let everyone know that, hey, as an employee here, you have the right to speak up and say something, especially, like I said, dealing with teams. So if you see someone running or doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, know that you are empowered and that I support you in enforcing that particular policy or rule. So I just let them know that I do support them. And like, I think it was Christy that was saying that, I do try to do fun things. So occasionally what we do, we'll have like something fun, like little parties or something like that. But one of the things that I do to let them know that I value them is to acknowledge everyone's birthday. So we don't do a cake or anything like that for every single birthday, but I do give every person a card that I circulate and let everyone sign it just to recognize them and acknowledge them and let them know that we value them.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next one is: a small group of employees spends a lot of time socializing outside of work and a lot of time talking about it at work. Other employees have commented that they feel excluded and awkward when they need to ask a member of this group for something at work. What issues might arise, and how would you handle it as the manager of these employees?
I thought about this question, and I personally don't have a problem with a group of employees getting together after work or talking about something that they did after work if it's not inappropriate. If the conversation was inappropriate, then I think it would need to be addressed. But I don't know. I think the thing I would do is ask the person who is complaining about it, what is it exactly? What's the issue that they have a problem with? And, why does it make them feel uncomfortable?
I have to agree with Stephanie. I actually had a particular staff member who was not as close with some of the other coworkers, and some other ones were kind of in the little niche, and they would go out and do stuff. And I mean, obviously at work, they're allowed to talk about it. And I mean, if it's excessive talk, then that's when I could come in and say, okay, hey, we need to focus on some of the library duties right now. But I think Stephanie made the good point of asking the staff member who's having the issue of what the issue really is on their part. And it's so silly, but it really goes back to that high school mentality. They're not feeling connected, or they're feeling left out. And then I'm just like, listen, hey, we can't all be friends, but as long as they can have a working relationship where they respect the other person's work, I'm happy with that. I don't need them all to be buddy-buddy, because if they were all buddy-buddy, we might have a bigger issue if they were trying to gang up on me or something.
Right.
And I'll jump in here and say that I have seen things like this become a little bit toxic in my own experience, where you end up having a couple of staff members who are very close and they don't want to work with other people on the team, to the point that they're not sharing information with other people on the team, or, not including them on projects and things. And so what I've had in this, obviously people can be friends and all of that, but, trying to encourage more of that interaction outside of that small clique. We've done things like we split them up on projects. So we've assigned them to work with somebody else on a project, or, we have a desk schedule. We only have one public services desk for reference and circulation. So switching out who's on the desk together, to try to, cut down on some of the more distracting chatter, but also encourage relationships with people that they aren't hanging out with outside of work. And that has helped a little bit because, it encourages that working relationship outside of their small group.
The only thing I'd add is I'm actually working with kind of the flip of that, and then I've got a couple of individuals who are very much stay in their lane, don't engage, don't interact. They're very much not a part of the team, and they can be to the point where they're unapproachable or not responsive to emails. And so these are all like real easy to address because it's trackable. You're not responding to these emails from your coworkers. You're not answering the questions. You're not providing the support you need to. So unfortunately, it's become more of a performance issue. But it was weird when I read this question, because I just thought I would love to have a group that actually interacted, where right now I'm just kind of dealing with all these islands. So that's just kind of an opposite of that. And maybe it's easier in this scenario, like I said, because I can actually track the lack of response or the lack of engagement. But it's difficult getting people to just kind of want to engage and kind of even move out of their lane. And so I'm just working on changing processes where I'm saying, okay, every task is a shared task, and everyone helps with this process. I don't care what your department is. Everybody is all in on this. And as part of my example is I'm right in there with them, and like I say, leading from the front and just trying to set the best example I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. In our next scenario, a reliable library employee occasionally brings their 5-year-old child with them to work on a Saturday. The child stays at the library all day and follows their parent around. The employee did not talk to you, their manager, about bringing their child to work beforehand, and you found out about it from another employee. What would you do? And what other information would you want to know about this?
I want to answer that. Our policy is not to bring your children to work. So employees know that. I think that was a problem here in the past, where people would bring their children to work and then they would want their coworkers to like find stuff for their kids to do, or, it's just unacceptable. I would definitely address it as soon as I found out about it. Cannot bring your children to work. I think if it was some situation as an emergency and if it was a weekend, I would prefer them to call in and not bring, I don't know. It just depends on the situation. But it definitely is against Durham County's policy to bring your children to work.
Yeah, I wrote nope down when I was like, it would have to be a weirdly crazy situation. I've had a few staff ask, but it's like you can get your work done, but then, you know for a fact that your child is going to be, hey, where's mom? I need something done. And they understand to a point. So yeah, I don't think we specifically have a policy, and that might actually bring up a good point to have something expressly noted. But yeah, it's a hard situation because then you're going to kind of be parenting at the same time, and it's hard to separate that.
Yeah, and I rewrote some of these scenarios a little bit to make them clearer, but my questions about this one were, is the child on the public floor? Because, you know, we work in public libraries and there's issues. I don't know that it's a safe place for a 5-year-old to be, even if they're with their parent. If their parent's working, they're going to be distracted.
I
And
was
then,
thinking the same thing. Like something could happen and the library could be liable.
yeah. And then
if you had your kid there.
And then occasionally, like I didn't have any information. Does occasionally mean once a year? Does it mean once a month? I think that would kind of make a difference too.
Yeah, for me, that would definitely make a difference because I'd want to know, was this like an emergency situation or was this just, oh, you weren't here on Saturday, so I thought it was okay to bring my kid in every Saturday at work.
Yeah.
But for me, it would be, I'd want to talk to the staff member and be like, why is this happening? Because it may be something where, you know, we can discuss scheduling, we can discuss other options besides having the kid at work.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like Kate said, I would definitely come at it from a safety perspective of, you know, this is not safe. We don't allow children under 10 to be here unattended. And if you're working, your child's going to be unattended. And, you know, try to balance those childcare needs with library needs, but reiterate again that except for emergency situations, children should not be at the library during working hours.
The other thing I have to add is I would always just make sure that there hasn't been some preset accommodation through this employee in HR. As a manager who has been sent into locations to work on projects and things, often there's accommodations and things that are set before I get there. And so just establishing that, even if I'm not aware of it, I would always just confirm with HR. I said, is there any conversation or has there been anything done that prior to my presence at this location, or even since I've been here, that I've just been left out of the loop on? I just want to make that clarification before I go and address it, rather than walking right up and then hearing, well, I got the approval from HR. So that would be the only step I would add into what we've talked about so far.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're going to switch over to some customer scenarios. Our first one, we had a lot of scenarios submitted that were on this topic. So our first one is a challenge to materials. How would you handle a customer complaint after a family-themed story time that included The Family Book by Todd Parr? And the customer making the complaint specifically says, same-sex couples are such a minority in the population that it isn't necessary to introduce this topic to young children. Please exclude this topic from your story times in the future.
Can I start?
Go.
I just had this to happen.
Oh my gosh.
Is that okay?
Yes, go for it, Stephanie.
Okay,
jump in.
Okay. Just had this to happen. Okay, so
it's looking good when I looked at it last.
Everything's labeled.
We had
Almost running out of print
so I
stuff.
had someone to challenge a book just recently,
Some more.
and Durham County did have a policy in place as to how to go through the process if someone would like to have a book removed from the collection, but it hadn't been done in maybe like 20 years. But there is a form that they filled out. Basically, they challenged a book. We had a policy in place. There is a committee, like the collections development. It was like a small committee of people, but I was included on it. We went through the book. We discussed why the people from collections development were great. They went and did research and pulled articles about this particular book. They looked at other libraries that had removed the book, or they decided to keep it as to why. I think it was The Travels of Babar. And so basically there were some images in there that were like blackface images, and the parent would, requested that we remove those from the collection. And so basically, in the end, we decided not to remove it because we could have either removed it altogether or put it in nonfiction for historical content. and we didn't do that. We kept it, and then they had the option to challenge it and take it before the director, which they did. And so once it went before the director, the board of trustees had to go and talk about it and vote on it, and the person had the opportunity to come before the board and argue, you know, their reasoning for wanting it taken out. So in the end, we decided to keep the book. I was fine with it. The customer was really friendly. She didn't seem to have a problem with that. But she explained why she felt the way that she did. And, you know, she felt heard. I think in the end, that was the biggest thing. Now, as far as that particular book and same-sex marriages, we didn't have that, but we had a drag queen story time, and we had a display up for Pride Month, and I had a customer to come in and complain to the staff. Of course, they referred them to me. So then they called me, and they, you know, I heard them. And basically the way I addressed it was I read from our policy word for word that we were inviting inclusive place, that we try to represent all members of our community, that we do not exclude, and we were not discriminating against any group, and we try to put up displays and offer programs that represent every member of our community. And you know, that person got upset with me and told me I was using the wrong type of language. And, you know, I listened to them for 30 minutes. And at the end, I really did thank them and appreciated them calling me and expressing their concerns. And, you know, and I told them, I said, in the end, I apologize for you feeling uncomfortable when you came in, because it is my goal to make sure that I have a welcoming environment. So, you know, I knew that I wasn't going anywhere with that conversation. She actually said, thank you for saying that, because I wanted her to feel heard, that to know that, you know, I really am concerned about how people feel when they walk in. So she appreciated that. And then in the end, I did refer her to our deputy director, and he spoke to her, and, you know, so I don't know where it is at this point. I think it went all the way up to our director. Mm-hmm. But I did, you know, I did start with the policy, and I did explain that we do put displays and we do have programs that represent all members of our community, and that we are a very inclusive place. And I was like, one of the things that people tend to say about the library is that it does provide a level playing ground for people of all walks of life. So, you know, we try very hard to make sure that everyone is included. And that's how I handled that particular situation.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to what Stephanie said, because I've dealt with several things similar to this. I think the biggest thing is don't get into a debate. You know, stick with the policy, give them options where they can address their concerns, either with the director or the board of trustees. And, you know, like Stephanie said, thank them for the feedback, make sure that they feel heard. But yeah, that's how I would handle it.
Yeah, that was the thing. I didn't want to get into a debate with her. I just really had to listen. And, you know, I wanted to argue my point and how I felt about it, but I tried to really not do that. And I felt like I entertained the conversation way too long. Like, I feel like I should have cut it off a lot earlier than I did, but she stayed on the phone with me for a good 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I want to jump in right here and just add that I monitor a moms group on Facebook, and as part of my library work, I recommend library resources when people have questions related to that. And the number of people in that group asking for story times and resources for kids under 5 that show, you know, diversity, equity, non-traditional families has just skyrocketed in the last couple of years, and we've actually added several story times to regularly cover this topic. Okay, so our next customer scenario here. At a library location with limited staff and funding, the same customers always sign up for special programs right away. New customers are not able to participate because the spaces are filled weeks in advance. What would you do?
Can I chime in?
Go for it.
So I would just say that this is a process issue. So it's if people are signing up months in advance or they have reoccurring bookings, this is just simply to make it more accessible to more people. You can only sign up for a week in advance. Limit the number of times or the time in advance that the person can actually get multiple sessions, or just avoid. There's a way to set up your policies where you can say, we don't sign up people to. Sorry, I think I just muted myself. So I don't know where I cut myself off, but basically you just set the standards for sign up so you make it a little more accessible for more people and not just the reoccurring folks. And you can even, hey, we only have one session per month per person. There's a lot of different ways in which you can establish a policy and just communicate that policy change. And why you're wanting to do it, because you're wanting more people to have access to this resource. That's
possibly move it to a larger room. Maybe not have a sign-up sheet. I don't know, depending on if there are materials that you need to purchase. Is that why you have, the pre-registration for the class or the program? But I would try, if you have a larger room, to move it to a larger space so that it could accommodate more people.
Yeah, I think when I originally read this scenario, the limitations were it was supplies for the program and they only had money to purchase a certain number of supplies.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then our last scenario for today. A regular library customer, Lee, is chronically following a library employee, Jordan, around as they work and asking incessant personal questions. Lee will also call on the phone and ask if Jordan is there and want to talk to them for a while on the phone. What would you do?
And I'd like to go first on this because I had almost this exact situation at my library where a library customer was following one of my staff around and asking questions. What I did was I first encouraged the staff member to, if in this case it was a female, if she was comfortable to tell him, I don't answer those questions at work or that kind of thing. And the reason I did that instead of addressing it first myself is because I've run into situations in the past where the staff member doesn't say anything to the customer. And then when I say something to the customer thinks it's just me who's upset that the customer is taking the staff member's time. And so they'll wait till I'm not around to talk with the staff member. So I try, with safety and comfort, try to encourage the staff member to at least say something to begin with. And then if it continues after that, or if the staff member doesn't feel safe or comfortable addressing it, then talking with the customer, setting up a meeting with them, or, just trying to catch them the next time they're in the library, and, let them know that you appreciate them using the library, but then say, asking personal questions of any staff member is not an appropriate use of the library. We actually have in our behavior policy specific language about harassing or making staff uncomfortable. So I would cite that and just tell them, if they continue to behave this way, they're not going to be able to use the library in the future. And reiterate that library related questions are fine and that any staff member can answer those. It's not just this one staff member. If things continue to escalate at that point, I would investigate either banning in this situation, either temporarily or permanently, depending on how it escalates.
I have to agree. Christy, we've had a few Lees at our library, and it's actually happened to me and one of my staff members. And the first time it happened with me, the gentleman had came into my office and was talking, and I was just like, okay, I got to try to get him out of the office somehow, and made me a little bit weirded out, so to say. And the first step that I did was I let, since I am in charge of everything, I let my right hand know what was going on. I didn't broadcast it to the staff, but I at least made sure that another person in the library is aware that I was getting a very weird vibe from a patron, just in case, I can joke about it now, but in case I went missing, hey, this is where you need to kind of direct your searches. And it's, you can joke around about it, but it is a really, serious, scary situation. And we had another patron who kind of started with one of the other staff members, and we addressed it exactly like Christy said each time. We made sure that the person who was receiving those advances just noted something, basic. But we had a person who liked to leave letters at the CERC desk for staff members. And the first time it happened, she brought it to me and I said, oh, yes, I've received these as well from the same gentleman. You are not taking care of this. I immediately jumped in just because I had already received the quote unquote sexy time letters from him. So I think the best thing to do is make sure that you're safe, that other people at least are aware of what's going on, that you're documenting things as well. And that you're following some protocol to make sure that you're letting the person know if it's just innocent, quote unquote, hey, this is not welcome. And then if it gets to a certain point, that's when, I threw around a letter of sending it on letterhead. This is not acceptable. If anything, else happens, that I'm going to have to take this to my board type language. So I think the first and foremost is just making sure that you're safe in any situation and that you're making sure people know what's going on.
I would definitely document, address it to the patron, and then let them know that if it continues, then they would possibly be banned for it. But I don't know. I think we're kind of quick to ban, just depending on the length of time that we would ban them would depend on whatever the infraction is. But definitely that would be considered harassment. And we've had people banned permanently not recently, but we've had people banned permanently in the past for following staff around and doing inappropriate things. And just recently, one of those people that were banned came back to the library. We didn't know because it had been so many years that he was back and it was at a different location. So I think, safety, it's important to take it seriously and, be quick to act on it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Webinar participants, do you have any other questions for our panelists? And if you don't have audio, you're welcome to put them in the chat box and I can read them out. And I also just want to remind you that we're planning future webinars on a couple of topics that we had an overwhelming number of scenarios submitted for. Challenges to library materials, team building and motivation, skills for 21st century library staff, and succeeding in challenging customer interactions. We're planning future webinars on all 4 of those topics. Are there any questions for our panelists? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for attending today. We really appreciate you all being here. And thank you, panelists, for your time and participation. This was really, really great and helpful. I will send out the recording in about 3 to 5 days. Just depends on how long it takes me to process.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. And I have to add, we've said 5 million different things today to you guys, but if you do it differently, you do it differently. I've learned that, by talking to people when you get overwhelmed because somebody else is doing it such an amazing way. And then you're like, wait, hold on. Am I even doing it right? If it works for you, it works for you. So don't break or fix what's not broken, so to say. But thank you for having us.